All right, welcome back to part two. I'm gonna come up of the teardown on this, and I'll finish taking the rest of the way. We last video we got down to here, got down to this cylinder here. Let me get a little bit bigger screwdriver where I can get this intake clamp off here. So one thing good about this saw is it did have the metal intake boot clamp. So pop that off. That's a reusable clamp. So we will clamp it. We'll reuse this and clamp this back. Sometimes that's a little snug. So let me, there we go. So like I said in the previous video, we'll reuse this and reuse that, that piston and ring. I don't know, we'll probably replace the ring when we got to use it again, but the piston looks good, the cylinder looks good. So in a future build, this will get ported and go on another saw at another point in time. All right, so let's go ahead and get the side cover off here. This recoil starter. This is something a lot of people don't do with their saws. I've always been, if you take care of something, it'll last you a whole lot longer. And a lot of times people be like, man, your saw looks almost new. Well, every time I use it, it gets cleaned. Compressed air is your friend on a saw. You don't have to really put solvents on it. If you just blow it out every time you use it or whatever, it'll always stay looking good. I mean, thing is, you don't go to a mechanic shop very much and see his tools just full of grease. When he gets you, before he puts them up, most mechanics will wipe them down and put them back in their cabinet. So I feel the same way. I mean, if for a man that works in the wood or makes his living working in the woods, this saw is his #1 tool. So why are you going to use it and just throw it in the back of the truck, leave oil and sawdust all over it, and just abuse it for years and years and years when, you know, cleaning them helps keep them, because a clean saw is a cool running saw. That's what a lot of people don't understand. You can see this one's pretty dirty up under here. And, but if you can keep one clean, the air filtration system on it and the cooling system works as it's intended. But if this thing gets stopped up with grease and grime, then it ain't cooling like it should. So, all right, let me get my. I'll move you out of the way just a second. I'm gonna get a. Something to pull off this we'll take this, take my T27 off of there, because I'm not going to have to use a T27 on a Husky product. 13 millimeter. Just back that off of there. And I usually use just like a little dead blow hammer. Sometimes you might have to get a screwdriver in here to kind of pull back, but get all this out of the way. Basically, just lay it to the side here and tap around on this. This one ain't, you can tell this one ain't been off in a while. All right, put a little bit of back pressure on it. It's trying to come. It ain't wanting to cooperate though. Well, I'm gonna cut this off. I'm gonna do a little work, and when I get off, I'll bring you back in. All right, welcome back. That bad boy was seized on there. I had to do some work to get that off. I wound up having to take the bladed chisel and come in from the side and drive it in there to force it off, because this don't really have a good place for a pulley puller. But it's off now. It has an internal key, so you don't have to worry about that falling out or anything. So all right, so back where we was at. Anyway, so now we're down here. See how dirty that thing is, but we'll leave it like this to be able to clean it. Now we're going to get out, take the fuel tank off of this thing. So this is not a real hard process. So this is the first screw you got to take out here. I think I will keep these because these are very similar to the brake handle screws. So we'll use a different one for that, for these screws. There's one right down here in the bottom of the crankcase. It just screws into like a little buffer like it. Sometimes it won't hardly come out. You got to take your screwdriver and reach down in there and kind of prise it up out of there, because it's not screwed into the buffer. It's only screwed into the case. And then that'll come out when we start to lift it up. Same place on the other side is one just like that one on the bottom. That was full of junk. Now we'll be able to get down in there. Yep. Yeah, these on this side, take your time and clean them out, because you can strip these bolt heads out and then you do got you a problem. But if you'll just take a second, get your little scratch all pick or something like that and kind of dig the grease out, then you won't have a problem. All right, so that one's out of there. And there's one up here at the front. Where your, a lot of times your chain catcher will go, but on these homeowner saws, the chain catcher is actually made to the crankcase, so it won't be on this screw. All right, so now that's all that holds the handle on. So now we're going to, let me crack this loose, make sure we're not going to lose, all right, we're not going to lose fuel out of that. And pop this. That holds the, we'll just pull the throttle linkage and spacer out. All right, it's ready to come apart. It's just that simple. I mean, ain't really a lot to that. And I see the return line for the, so this thing had to have been leaking gas whenever you leaned it over to fill it up, because the return line off the carburetor is supposed to hook up here, but that's broken. So we'll put a new return line from the purge bulb back to the fuel tank on it when we start to hook it up, because it had to have been leaking when you turn this all sideways. All right, but we'll get that washed up. So now here, let's get the, I probably should have got them while I was getting on it, but let's go ahead and we can do it now. I should have pulled that clutch off. Well, I had the cylinder head on there, but we can get it now. And I'm going to show you how I do it. A lot of people do it a lot of different ways, but I just take they make a tool for it, but you don't necessarily have to have a tool. You can, these clutches have these little notches in them. Remember, this thing goes to the right, so it's righty-loosey on these. So I just hang a screwdriver in there, and you start hitting down. All right, and it'll, oh, stock came out. Hold on just a second. Thought it was loosening, it was just my stock fell out of there. All right. This thing's tight like the thing's tight like the other was. All right, this is gonna be aggravating like the clutch. You can tell this stuff ain't been off in a while. I'll bring you back in a minute. I'm gonna have to do a little work on it. All right, I'll bring you back. Out there, it was froze up about like that. I had to get serious with it, but I got it broke loose. So then it'll just spin off of there. And thing is, I can tell, you can really tell when a saw's been maintained or hasn't been maintained, because you need to be inspecting this. There's clutch side bearing over here, and it's something that probably I normally, every time I change the chain on the saw, I pull this clutch off, check this bearing, check my sprocket, stuff like that. So I'll lay that in here, get the sprocket off. It's got a little wear, but I mean, it ain't bad. I mean, we'll probably reuse that sprocket. The bearing is surprisingly in good shape. All right, down to probably one of the Achilles heels on these saws is the oiling system. It oils good, but it was the design that they did not use a oil tube or anything like that to get the oil into the chute where it comes on the bar. They use this plate, and these plates are notorious for getting worn around. I'll show you once I get this plate up off here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. But they're notorious for getting worn around where the bar mounts, and it creates a groove there. Well, that groove then breaks the seal and allows the oil to run out the bottom instead of onto the bar. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm gonna bring you in for a second. So on these saws, as you can see, there's the oil pump. Look at all the crud in there around that oil pump. It need to be clean. But see, this little tube right here comes up, but it's an open tube. It puts oil into the line. Well, all it does is creates a seal on the back of this. So when this gets bent, you can see where it's bent right here along that line. Well, when that gets bent, it loses prime, and it'll quit oiling. So if you ever have one of these 350s, 340s, 345s, all the way up to the all the way up through a 359 has this style. Oops, sorry. Has this style. And so if you have one that loses its ability to oil, then that's what you need to look for. It's probably got a bad side plate on it. These are $8 to $12, something like that. It's an easy fix. It's just aggravating, but you put that on there. Now this right here is nasty. Let me dig the screw out that holds it in. There's two right there. I don't even know how the thing's working. The gear's packed full of, but it was oiling, so we'll get all that addressed, get this all cleaned up. Get this in here. It is adjustable. It is an adjustable oil pump as well. This is adjustment screw that goes to the bottom, but look how just nasty that is. But all right, now, the only thing left to do now is take off the the bottom two, or out these bottom screws. Well, they're all there, thank goodness. It takes a bigger, it takes the number 5. There's 4 screws under here that holds this together. And while we're in here during this rebuild, you get down this far, it's crazy not to just go ahead and put bearings and seal. Well, the bearings might be all right, but you at least need to put new crank seals on it. Because, I mean, you already got the saw tore apart. And you'd hate to put this thing all the way back together. And when you could have changed I mean, it's a very reasonable, they're not expensive at all, and it'd be crazy not to change them while you had it apart. Reach in there and get that screw. All right, now we just take this and watch this be about like everything else, where it should easy come apart, but we'll just tap up on the crank a little here on each side. It should pop loose. But of course, it's going to be difficult, about like everything else in this bend. I wouldn't expect it to be easy, I don't guess. I see we're creating a little bit of a separation here. So now we can just here we go. All right. That'll come up. Now we can just, crank will come out of there. Maybe it's down in there good. We'll get her to come. We got movement. Yep. All right. Now, we'll come right out of there. They're original, but they were not, they wasn't leaking. So that was a good thing. All right, so I leave that on there when I take it off, because once I pull this piston, I'll pull the riser up on there. But it's always easier to install the piston before you put it back in the saw, because that sear clip can be a real booger when you're all in there trying to work around in the saw. But this has to go on before the piston goes on, because it will not come off around the piston. So I usually just leave it there, pull it off, because I know that it needs to go back just like that before it sits down in there. So here you go. Just let you see, this is what these saws look like. I mean, it's basically running in a plastic shell. That's the reason a lot of people don't like these saws. But there has been a lot of these saws that have really been abused over the years, that have a lot of hours on them. And this is one part down here I've never seen fail on these saws. The cases on these saws are good. This is a problem area, But the problem ain't the case, it's the poor muffler design. They don't come with a bracket that holds the muffler on. But when I build these, I get the bracket for a 353, 357, or, you know, that front bracket that goes on the 353 or 346 XP. It just has a secondary bolt hole on this side, so I cut that tab off so it bolts here, and then 2 through the front, and that helps. Even if these bolts come loose, the muffler's staying intact, so it helps. So that remedies that. But we're gonna get this cleaned up out on at the wash bay, all these parts, and then when we come back, we'll start the process of reassembling.